father had served in the First World War, so he fought on the Western Front, but he got gassed and was sent back home. So he told me he wouldn't allow me to join the army, but he died Christmas 1939 when I was 17, and of course when I was at the end of my 18th birthday, that's when I tried to join the army, and I got in on just at the beginning of my 19th birthday. Yeah, well, see, mostly he kept awake at night time, and to fight off any patrols or anything, because we go out to a listening post out from our front line, and our patrols would be out every night. Actually, we own no man's land, and our patrols were out sort of guarding the perimeter and that every night, and it was just one big battle of a night, and it was pretty dusty, and in the desert, but it was, and to dig your trenches where you had to dig them, that they were rocky, it was sort of a rocky desert, and you couldn't go down. Sometimes you'd only be that deep in the trench, so you had to keep your head down all the time. So you had the heat in the day, and then at night time you had the cool of the desert nights and that. Especially if you had to be out in a listening post, just laying there waiting for the enemy to come. Oh, well, you had your minefields, but you had your paths to go through them. So and you had all your trip wires and all different things like that. So and your barbed wire and all that surrounding your own post, wherever you were. And there was no continuous trench system. There was a section post here, and one would be back here, and the next one would be over there. So that's how the front line went there. But it was never ever, a continuous trench system like there was in the First World War. We wouldn't bath or shower or anything like that for at least a month. When we came out of the front line, they'd take us down to the sea so we could have a clean up down there, but that was few and far between. But they were pretty harsh, and it was, you didn't feel dirty, but you were a bit grubby by the time you done your service in the front line. So. Well, we're in 3 to 4 weeks. We'd be in the front line, depending on conditions and the movement of the enemy, and the same with our troops in other parts of the front line, because it stretched right round Tobruk, so that it was quite a length to look after. Actually, we were. We were in there in the normal trench system, and then we were transferred back to what they call the blue line. It was the second line of defence, and it was the first time we slept above the ground for a month. But back in the blue line, you could, because you're away from small arms fire, and you could lay on the ground there at night time. And then around about lunchtime, all hell broke loose. The big guns were firing at us, and the planes were coming in and strafing us and everything. So we knew, something was going on in the front line, and that's when the salient was formed. But we were taken in by that, and what really happened, they decided that, and that's when the Germans took a section of the front line, and they decided to send us in, straight back in, and then there was yes and no going on all the time, and then they raced us in, and it was too late at night time, and because we dropped short of the front line, and by the time we got to a certain point where the artillery thought we weren't, and then that created a bit of havoc in that, because their guns opened up on us again, and that's where the front line was called. And it was that night that I received a bullet wound, and then anyhow, that's where we formed the front line. That was the trench system that we built, and you could only go down about waist deep in in that section of the desert. Well, I was sent back to look for the reserve battalion, reserve company, and then when I came back to report, they were nowhere to be seen. That's when the machine gun opened up, and I just happened to cop a bullet. It was a flesh wound, fortunately for me, and so about 17 hours before I was treated. You don't run away with little scratches like that. So that was common practice especially in the front line. And it was more so when they were going to attack too. They'd send them in, and you'd look up and you'd just about see the whites of their eyes, before they released that 500-pound bomb on you. So, but these things happen. The bombs fall all around you, and you survive. So. Oh no, but as long as you're below ground level, if you got a direct hit, well, it's unfortunate, but as long as you're below ground level, no matter where the bombs, because all the shrapnel will go, but you were safe below ground level. But it just come, you just took it in your stride. These things happen every day. Oh, well, you just go out and you're looking for the enemy, or you're trying to get the strength of the enemy. And, excuse me, and you're testing the enemy all the time. And you go out and you're probing here and probing there, or you might meet a German patrol or an enemy patrol in the desert, and you just do your work and hopefully you get back to your own front line. And so that's. But then we had special group that would be behind the line, and then they come up for the night time and do a lot of these patrols. We used to do our own from our own trenches, where we have a listening post and that, to warn the trench system that the enemy was approaching and things like that. But every night we had patrols out there, so I think the enemy was on their toes, that knowing that the Australians were in the no man's land every night. So. Oh, well, there's lots. We had lots of fun with together with our mates and that. Even though it was wartime and everything was war, day after day, night after night. It was just war. But we had our own fun, in the groups and that. And we used to get the mail from home. And we used to call whoever went down to get. You have to go behind the front line to bring up your hot meal. If everything was quiet, you could go down and bring that back up and bring your ammunition up and all that. And so we used to get the mail up, and then of course we had pass on the news from home to round with the boys, and so it was quite good. So, but you get used to the sand blowing here and blowing there, and you get used to the conditions. And after almost 9 months, it was just common knowledge and practice to bear the days in and out. So it was quite good. We captured Tel Eliza. 2 sections of us were left. That we didn't know that the rest of the battalion had moved back to higher ground, and we were captured, and then we were taken to Italy and put in what they called the bad boys camp, and then we were sent out to work camps. Well, 3 of us escaped from there, and we walked across the Swiss Alps into Switzerland. And for the first 3 days it rained, and they couldn't find us. In the mountains, as long as we could get some distance away from there. So, and then we just marched on, and we had to change from our uniforms to civilian clothes, and we just had ordinary shoes and that, and yet we walked right across the mountains into Switzerland. The mountain people were very good, and we were in the French-Italian section, and they were very, quite kind us, but you couldn't trust anybody, so we just, even when we're given a bed at night time, we just jump out the window and wander off because you didn't know who to trust. And so we just kept on plodding across the mountains. We just ran into a guard post, and they said they'd been watching us for hours coming down the mountains, so on their side. And no, they were quite good. And then when the second front came, we came out through Geneva into France, and then back home and joined our own army again. We don't talk about it much, but inwardly you feel you've done something great that's helped Australia, because we were the first to beat Hitler's army, back in those days. So inwardly you feel quite content with yourself that you've achieved something. Because it was one of the great victories of the war.